And I want to give you credit because after you were on in July, Chris and I, we were actually in New York. And on September 11th, this was a third day up in a row off of a low, which I know is
Mhm.
one of the rules that you had talked about, one of the
Yes.
buy signals that you look for. And it was such a powerful
Mhm.
outside day, upside reversal, big character change. So Chris and I were in New York. You inspired us. And we said, oh yeah, Vibha, she looks at the 3 days up, and we both bought TQQQ.
Yeah, I only
Then
have, I have a lot of sell rules for TQQQ because it is so leveraged. But for buy rules, I only have two. And one is the first primary one, of course, is ideally if it's a follow through day, then I'm in. But even before a follow through day, if we have 3 days of higher highs and higher lows, that is a trigger to me to at least initiate a position. And those are my only two buy rules. I mean, it's not huge, but that's what I do. So I'm glad that I inspired you guys and that it was
yeah.
successful.
First of all, with TQQQ, you mentioned this. You are able to make it a larger part of your portfolio. When you do have a spot on entry, um, tell us what that initial size is, and are you adding to it, or how do you handle position sizing for something like this, which is a little bit different? It's leverage, but you don't have that single stock risk.
Yeah, so this is something, I don't know if I said it the last time I was on your show, but I have said it with other people. I worry about sharing my position size because, as I said, I have an iron stomach and I have very different rules that I follow. A lot of
Yeah,
people can't handle the volatility.
right.
So my thing is when there's a follow through day, if I don't have an individual stock to hold, I will sometimes be 100%. Um, which is a lot, right? But
Mhm.
it's if I believe that the market is in an uptrend, especially after coming down a lot, I can be 100%.
Yeah,
Most of the time, I will initiate positions in TQQQ, but my thought is if I find something else that's more attractive, I sell down.
right.
So
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily, if I have 100% or 75% or 50%, I'm not doing that to hold it
right.
a longer term. I'm doing that as I want to be in the market. I don't have
Mhm.
an individual stock I want to buy, so I'm going to start by putting my money here so it grows while I find something else. Does that
Right.
answer your
Yeah,
question?
definitely. And we've talked about that before. Mike Webster, our senior market strategist, he's called that a source of funds. So kind of like
Mhm.
you said, kind of like a placeholder, but
Exactly.
you want to be in the market, you want that exposure. But if you see individual stocks that then are setting up and actionable, then exactly like you said, selling the index ETF to make room for the individual stocks
Right.
and
And
maintaining the exposure, overall portfolio exposure that you want to have.
exactly. And if there has not been a follow through day, then I look for those like three higher highs, higher lows. Then I don't go in at those high levels. And I'll start with maybe 25% or 50%,
Mm.
depending on how those 3 days of higher highs and higher lows, what was the volume? What is the rest of the market doing? How much did it actually pull back? So I'll kind of take those things into consideration. So it is again, like I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but there is an art to this as well. And I think the art sometimes you gain after you have experience in the market. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I shared my stories before of, 1999, I got in right during the peak and then I saw my portfolio crash. So there is a learning curve. And
Yeah.
no matter how experienced you are, there's going to be those bad days, but there is some art to this as well as a
Yeah.
science.
Totally
Well, and I,
agree.
I
Go
think it's so
ahead.
important that you kind of started the whole conversation there with almost like a do not try this at home,
Yeah.
like type thing. This is a professional because the way that you're able to do that is because of your cell rules, and because you know yourself. I think that that's where a lot of that art comes from is
Mhm.
almost knowing your own psychology and
Right.
knowing what you can handle. And I say this a lot of times. Look, there's so many rules that we have that you can follow, but at the end of the day, it's that implementation of the rules,
Right.
right? You can
No,
know the
that's
rules, but
Yeah.
implementing them is a whole different story.
no that's a huge thing. So many people that have reached out to me that I have talked to, it feels like a lot of people either have the strategy or they have like an implementation, but you have to marry those two together.
Yeah.
you know, and for TQQQ, that's why again, like somehow like all these people are reaching out to me about TQQQ, but I have to share that I've been doing it since it first came out, like in 2015, I think is when I first started. So it's been 9 years. Like I can tell you the high was 91 something in November 2021 because I look at this every day, every moment. And you have to have a lot of commitment to do that. And if you don't, then please be very careful with triple leverage because it can hurt
Yes,
you really badly.
In a
it
way,
can.
Viba, you
Start
sound like
small.
in a way, you sound like you're also married to TQQQ.
It's an on
Well,
again,
I know,
off
but if you're
again
married, it goes
relationship.
from 91 to 16 in a year. So you know, you have to be able to deal with a lot of bad times to live with.
Yeah, on again, off again relationship.
That's right. There we go. That's it.
Yeah,
Okay. We nailed it.
actively trading this one, getting it now.
I think there's something to be said for, drilling down and knowing something very well, as you've said. And especially if you find a strategy that works, you don't always have to like, oh, let me know all of these different things. If
Right.
you just
Having
know
a
one thing,
specialization,
yeah, there's something to be
getting
said for
really good
that.
at it.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
having been married for 30 plus years, I'm not necessarily looking for the shiny new object.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'm with you.
Yeah, so I actually have a sticky note where I have my rules because it just helps me keep me grounded because of all the day-to-day volatility. So some are offensive, some are defensive. And again, it is an art. So when I sell, I generally sell in increments that once it reaches one sell signal, that will tell me, okay, like I need to start paying attention. I won't necessarily sell after the first sell signal, but when I see two or three, particularly if they happen, you know, close to each other, then I'm starting to really sell down. So one of the sell signals, which I mentioned, is when it makes like a new 52-week high, which it has done. So again, that triggered that, okay, now I need to see if it's made a new high, is it able to maintain that, or does it start pulling back to maybe forming a handle, which is also very possible. When it makes a new high, but it's in declining volume, that's again something I pay attention to, that, okay, it's making a new high, but there's no support behind it. Then I also look at what's happening with the overall market, like the number of distribution days. I know there's people have mixed opinions now about whether they're valid, but to me, they are still valid. So once we've had 4 to 5 distribution days, I'm much more likely to act more aggressively when it starts to pull down. Right now, we don't have that. I think there's 1 or 2 distribution days, depending on whether you're looking at S&P or NASDAQ. If it gives up the 10-day and rising volume. So again, it has not done that. That would be a trigger in the short term for me that, okay, it might be, you know, showing additional weakness. If we have 3 consecutive down days and rising volume with lower highs and lower lows, that's another sell signal. Right now, that is not happening. Um, when it has reached a recent high, if it tries to take that out, but it gets rejected 3 times, that to me is generally an indication that it may pull back. So, you know, for example, whatever this recent high is, it may pull back from here. It'll try to go up. But if it has 3 times when it has done that and it's not able to push past that, most of the time, at least in my studies, I've seen that it tends to pull back. And again, the bulls versus bears. So it's a combination of these different things, and it is a little bit of an art. But right now, we've hit 3 of these in terms of a 52-week high, new high and declining volume, and the bulls versus bears are over 60. So that's making me feel like it's more likely that there will be a pullback before it goes up from here. But you know, you just have to watch the action on a day-to-day basis and make that decision.
Right. And so with those sell signals, you're selling pieces of the position. And then where is your area where you're going to get totally out? Is it that 50-day, 10-week line, a sharp break of that level, or how do you treat that?
So usually I don't wait for it to go down that much. And so I would
For your
probably,
final, like for your final piece, I
yeah, for my,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. So I would probably be, again, it depends on how many of these it triggers.
Hmm.
So sometimes it coincides with the 50-day or 10-week, but many times it doesn't. So
Okay.
it's kind of looking at that. And again, I don't have a specific sort of
There's an
percentage,
art, like you
whatever.
said.
it is an art, but for me right now, I would probably let it get down to the 21 day before exiting totally.